I'm going to do something that, since I'm the only lawyer speaking today, lawyers don't generally do. I'm going to be brief. I'm going to try to focus on one thing. I'm focusing on one area, which is the area of owner liability. And in California, owner liability for seismic events has been, it's an area that hasn't had a lot of case law. A lot of statutory law, cities have passed ordinances, counties do a lot of good work. Most of the work has been done through legislative acts. There's been very few cases that have actually assessed liability against the building owner for failing to do what an owner needed to do in order to protect lives and to protect the property of other people. So, I don't know if I can move through this. Wrong direction? Here we go. We're now 20 years into investigations on potential consequences of seismic events. And during that time, this area of law that has really been applied from one single case has really focused on one question, and that is, it's a very simple question: what was reasonable? If you, as a property owner, are concerned about the liability that might follow from a seismic event that causes damage on your property to other people or to property, the question is, what did you do that was reasonable to prevent that harm? The case that has been decided comes out of the earthquake, the San Simeon earthquake on December 22nd, 2003, in Paso Robles. This is a picture of the Acorn building. It's in its restored form. This was before the earthquake. On the morning of the earthquake was a 111-year-old building. And so I'd like to just quickly go through what lawyers do every day. I have just simply quoted the case. So you can do what any lawyer would do. What I do in this area is just read through the case with me. You'll have the slides right here. And you can see that the cases always begin, the courts always begin with a set of the facts. And the tragedy of this morning is reflected in the very first paragraphs of the case. And what happened in Paso Robles was that when the earthquake hit, there were, the Acorn building had some shops in it. One of them was a clothing shop where a 55-year-old woman by the name of Marilyn Frost Zafuta worked, and a young 20-year-old girl by the name of Jennifer Lynn Myrick worked. When they started feeling the shaking, they ran out of the building, and unfortunately, when they ran out, the building collapsed on them and crushed them, and they both died in that, as a result of that. So their families filed an action ultimately, and the California Court of Appeal dealt with what would the test be for an owner who, in a case where someone is seeking to hold the owner liable for these sorts of injuries and these sorts, any property damage that ensued as well. So, as you can see, all of this work began back in 1989. We'll just follow the timeline here. We're going to focus on what was reasonable. In 1989, the city began doing work. It contained a consultant to look at unreinforced masonry buildings and sent a notice, and this one will be typical. If you're a building owner, if you work with building owners, if your constituents are building owners, you'll be familiar with these sorts of notices, and they probably happened a long, long time ago, where the owner got a notice that the building needed to comply with new standards, and particularly if you're in an area where your buildings are 111 years old. By November 1992, the city had completed its work, had identified the Acorn building among others, but it extended its compliance program for retrofitting all the way to 2018. So now that tees up the issue that had to be decided by the court, and that is still the issue that you as a building owner will face today, and that is, what did you do once you're aware that your building has retrofitting issues and has seismic vulnerability? What did you do? What steps did you take to make sure that there would be no damage to people or to property in the event of a serious earthquake? So what happened in this case was, because the deadline to comply had been extended all the way to 2018, the owner took the position that the owner was in compliance. The owner was in compliance with the law. There was no requirement to complete the work by 2018, and therefore what was reasonable had already been decided by the legislature. The legislature, in this case, using the term broadly, was the group of the supervisors of the city, the council members of the city, who decided that the deadline for compliance could be extended all the way to 2018. So that meant that the owner was in compliance with the law as of the date of this earthquake on December 22nd, 2003. So that was enough. So that's the question. That's the question that you as a building owner have. Is that enough? And the answer is no. What is the basic rule? We all have a duty at all times to take care we don't hurt other people. We do things that are, if we do anything that's designed to hurt other people, or we fail to take ordinary care to prevent that from happening, we're responsible. That general rule of liability is what the court applied in this case. And so if courts look to that rule, the question is, are you going to be allowed a free pass if you've complied with the whatever the city has determined you need to do and the timetable you need to do it on? And the answer was no. As I mentioned, you will have to do what's reasonable. So whatever steps it would have been prudent for you to take, you should have taken those steps, and you should have taken them well before the last day of compliance, when in this case would have been all the way out to December 31st, 2018. Now, so what the court decided and ruled was that these laws exist not to protect building owners, but to protect public safety. And so if you circle all the way back around, what does that mean? Who does a law protect in these circumstances? Protects people and not owners, and therefore the test of reasonableness is decided by the people as well. It's decided by a jury. And so when you, as a building owner, end up facing this question, did you do what it was prudent to do? Did you take the steps that a reasonable person would have taken? Did you do the investigations you needed to do? You should have done it. Would have been reasonable for you to do. That's the question that will ultimately be answered, and that's the issue that was decided in the one case that the California Courts of Appeals had dealt with, and that's the rule that applies. So I'll be happy to talk with anyone afterwards, but I promised I'd wrap up as quickly as I could and do that. And so if you can remember one thing, remember only that the test is applied by a jury, and you as a building owner have to take the steps that are reasonable under the circumstances, and you have to have done the investigation that is reasonable for you to have done during the course of the time you've been aware of these issues. So thank you very much.